All right, so I'm gonna be completely honest, right? So with me leaving Heat Beat, when y'all being at Heat Beat, us being from Miami, me Liberty City, y'all Hialeah, I had every intention on not talking about the Heat to start the show out, right? Just to kind of separate things, just kind of let everybody know it's a fresh start, it's a new thing, it's something different. And as soon as I decided that, they decided they were going to go on a 7-game win streak and make us talk about them. And so before I even get into it, because I got a lot to say about this team, I want to know what y'all think. And so, Lou, I'm going to go to you first. What have you seen that you liked and didn't like, and what do you want to see?
Oh man, so I think the biggest key so far has been just the development of everybody not named Jimmy Butler. Beginning with your main piece in Bam, Hawk has taken the leap. Just everything just feels together. I know they just were recording this on Sunday. They lost yesterday to the Bulls. Things kind of bogged down in that game, but for the majority of this 7-game win streak, it's been team ball. Just the ball's been moving. They've been defending. They've been in drop, switching, versatile. Just the team in general has been gelling. And it's just, yeah, like you said, man, they're making us talk about them just through their sheer play on the court. Absolutely.
Frankie?
Yeah, and I just loved the collectiveness of it. There's been a lot of high assist games for the team. The whole win streak, it was at least 4+ guys in double figures. There were some games there was like 6-7 guys. Lou mentioned Jaime. He's just been a real nice contribution as a rookie, not having to do too much on either end, just fitting in, making plays, stops, guarding everybody, just not getting in the way, making plays for everybody. The trio of him, Duncan, and Bam together, those lineups have been fun. We've seen Josh have moments. We've seen Duncan have a lot of moments. Kevin Love had some nice games. Kyle's been really solid. Jimmy's finally woke up, and overall, it's just been a lot of fun. They've been enjoyable to watch, which was not something we could say for that regular season team last year.
Man, all right. So this is my thing about this team, right? So in the offseason, we all know how that went. Dame Lillard requested to only go to the Heat. That took the whole offseason over, right? Mm-hmm. Now, me personally, I'm not the hypothetical trade person. I typically never care until it actually happens. And then as soon as the story came out that Joe Cronin didn't like the Heat's assets, I'm real good at detecting bullshit. And I knew like that was like an excuse because that's just not how trades typically work. You don't not get an offer and understand that 3-team trades exist and just say you don't like a team's assets. So I knew from the beginning Dame wasn't coming to Miami, right? And so I moved on very quickly from that. And I just looked at what the team was compared to what they were last year. And so the big thing that people were talking about was the loss of Gabe Vincent and Max Strus. And I do understand that they were huge in the Heat's playoff run, but they did have their flaws. And so I figured it would be a bit of a loss, but once they signed Josh Richardson, who has struggled on offense, but I did predict his defense would be solid. I kind of figured, okay, they could be pretty decent. What I didn't think about, though, was Haywood Highsmith. I figured he'd be better. I did not know he'd be starting caliber power forward better. And I did not – when you look at that front court, I don't know if there's a better defensive front court in the league. When you look at Jimmy Butler, Haywood Highsmith, and Bam Adebayo. And then the backcourt, yeah, you got Kyle Lowry, who's not the defender he used to be on ball at least. Off ball, he's still – his IQ is just so high he's going to be in the right spot at all times. And Tyler Heroes, he's gotten better defensively. But his leap offensively has been something that I didn't really – I could have predicted just like jokingly, but just him coming out, just looking elite at times, I did not predict. But I think this team, and like I said in the offseason, is better than the finals team last year. There's a lot more continuity. Not to blame Gabe Vincent and Max Strus, because Gabe Vincent in LA, though he's been struggling to make shots, he has been defensively still Gabe Vincent. And Max Strus has been hooping out in Cleveland. I'm going to give him credit for that. Absolutely. He has a lot more freedom out there. He's not just kind of playing a role, kind of trying to just get in where he fits in. JB Bigstaff really empowering him to do a lot of stuff. And so he's improved, but so is Duncan Robinson. So Duncan Robinson's back in the rotation. he's just doing stuff we've never seen from him before. He's taking guys off the dribble, reverse layups, all kinds of he's a totally different player. And so I'm not the prediction person. I'm not sitting, but like, how far do y'all realistically see this team going? Because my answer is my answer, but I want to know y'all's first.
Shit, my answer is where they were last year. How far can I see this team going? I could see them winning the whole thing. I don't think the team is perfect, but like you said, like, why not? Like, this team is better. They're more versatile. They're bigger, which was an issue last year. They tended to be a little bit smaller in some matchups, but I think with the addition of Highsmith, the addition of somebody like Thomas Bryant, who hasn't really been playing that great, but he adds size, Kevin Love getting a little more comfortable, continuity, Duncan showing up in ways that not even I expected. And I've been all over the Duncan hype, man. It's just been Jaquez, another powerful wing. Like, this team is built on big wings now. So I think this team can possibly take it even further than last year. I think the biggest key to their success is the guy who's currently not playing right now because of injury that has seemed he is the most polarizing topic of conversation among Heat Twitter.
I don't understand it.
Polarizing. No, it's polarizing because I tend to be, I try to be level-headed. I don't try to pick sides, but it's just unfortunate whenever this team has done good, he hasn't been in the rotation.
Yeah.
And then you try to think, is some of that his fault, or is some of that just people hitting their stride? I don't think it's 100% either way. I think it's some of this and some of that. But I mean, if this team wants to win, he needs to come back, man. We need Tyler to fill some kind of role. This offense yesterday against Chicago in the fourth, damn near after the 22-1 run, they were awful. Aside from Bam, so and Duncan obviously, but it's just little things like that. Like, this team, I can see him putting down the fourth banner, man. Truly.
Yeah. And I'm gonna get to Frankie on this, but you did mention Tyler, and I didn't really get into that. I just feel like he's one of those players where he kind of built a reputation for himself a long time ago, and I'm not sure if he's been able to shake it, because he did struggle with playmaking earlier on in his career. He still doesn't make the best decisions here and there, but he's definitely separated himself from like the Lou Will, Jordan Poole like group that he got grouped into 2 or 3 years ago. And I think now, especially, his defensive improvement has been something I didn't expect. So he's improved defensively. He's been, while he still sometimes takes shots he probably shouldn't take, he's been a lot more calculated with that. He's been simplifying his shot selection. He's been taking less dribbles. He's been quicker to move the ball. I understand the ball's been whipping around a lot faster without him, but that's just kind of more necessity than anything. But I do think, like Lou said, he is absolutely the X factor, and I do also see this team going all the way if they don't run into Denver, because Denver is still horrifying to me. Frankie?
I think as currently constructed, their ceiling is they can make it the same spot as last year. I still think they're missing about 2 pieces. It's that's not saying to take away from Tyler. Yeah. Because I feel even with Tyler, they're still missing like 2 pieces. Like, I feel like they really need another big wing.
Yeah.
Lou mentioned all the wings, but they're all like 6'7" and shorter and skinny and small. Yeah. There's no Aaron Gordon wing there. Size wing, and that's really what they've been missing. That Jay Crowder size guy, that PJ Tucker size guy that can size up. All those guys are great, are at their best sizing down, and they need a big power wing who could size up a little bit, help them not play too small. Highsmith's done a great job of that so far, but his shooting's been so erratic that. And Spo hasn't even trusted him to close much games. I don't think he played at all in the fourth quarter against the Bulls last game, and he was a plus 20 on the night. So that just goes to show you how things are with him. But I also really think they need another ball handler. The fourth quarter offense has been disgusting at times, and it's they need one guy who can really get to the cup. They really don't have. It's Jimmy when he's really playing and truly trying, and he remembers it's basketball season. But that's it. There's Jaquez is probably their other best guy getting to the rim, and they haven't really trusted him on ball yet. He's doing most of his damage off cuts, off post-ups, and off quick attacks like that. But I think one more guard, ideally, guy who could play on and off ball, which is a lot to ask for. And they don't have many assets as is. So
right,
a lot of Kyle Lowry trade talks, and then they need another. Then they would still need another point guard. So I like their team. I like that they're more enjoyable than last year. But I want to see them healthy, and I want to see them gelling with Caleb and Tyler in the lineup before I think they can win the championship like you guys. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, like I said, it's really about who they go up against. Denver, I don't think they have a shot in hell against. Phoenix, it depends. But
I think Boston. I think Boston is the toughest matchup in the East.
Yeah,
because I know we're saying West teams. I think Boston presents problems.
And I'm so tired of I'm not even one of those people who hates Boston. I'm just so tired of fucking seeing them. It's like every year it seems like since I was a kid, it's Heat versus Boston. Yeah. And at some point I just kind of want it to be done. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 1, Playoff Foul. I'm Kenny Spence. I'm here with my co-host. I got Lu with me. Lu, how you doing today? Introduce yourself a little bit.
What is going on? What is going on, man? My name is Lewis. Everybody calls me Coach Lu, aka Saucy Takes. I'm doing pretty good, man. Excited, thankful for being on the show, man, and ready to talk some hoops, man.
By the way, I've been working with Lu for a year over at Heat Beat before I left, and I had no idea that was his name. Franky, what's going on? My guy since technically high school, but not really. How are you doing today? Introduce yourself to the people.
I also just found out Lou's name is Lewis, and I've been working with him since the same time as Kenny. My name is Franky. You may know me from Heat Beat. I also do Stream Beat podcasts about movies and stuff. We haven't really been active lately because of the strike, but we're gonna get back into it. But yeah. You can find me on Heat Beat still. Not as much as I used to be, but I'll still be tuning in every now and then.
So basically what this is we get into every team in the league, past and present, because I just sitting back, I just realized they don't get a lot of recognition a lot of times. A lot of great players go ahead, they retire, fall to the wayside. They just pop up again once they go into the Hall of Fame. And people are like, why does he deserve that? What the fuck did he do? And I want to just keep guys' names alive, whether they're playing right now or if they played in the 80s, 90s, whenever it is. So today we don't have any past guys, but that will come. But for right now, we're going to talk about the Houston Rockets. Me personally, I feel like they may have had just quietly probably the definitive best offseason. I understand Boston made some huge moves, but they also lost a really important guy. They gained Drew Holiday, though, so it's kind of the jury's still out. We understand Dame Lillard went to the Bucks, but they did lose Drew Holiday, and so the defenses look tough. And Dame is getting his offense back together, and so that kind of remains to be seen. But the Houston Rockets, one, they hired Ime Udoka, and last year, and this is no disrespect to Steven Sizer, I just feel like he wasn't the right coach for that group necessarily. Yeah. Like a young coach and a young team just doesn't really gel anyway. You kind of need somebody who has experience to kind of lead and guide those guys. So you bring in Ime Udoka, you bring in Fred VanVleet, championship point guard. He struggled last year, but we know what he's capable of fully. They bring in Jeff Green, who won a championship with the Nuggets last year, still going, drafted the same class since KD. So I'm assuming he's 35 years old, somewhere around here.
37.
Still 37 years old, still tough, still defending, still dunking on people, ridiculous. But the main person I want to talk about on the Houston Rockets is Alperen Sengun. He's somebody, he got on my radar really last year, just watching those teams, because it was frustrating watching them not necessarily move the ball the way they should have. They had a lot of talent, a lot of guys who could score, but there's a lot of isolation, a lot of just dysfunction in a sense in the offense. And I'm like, wait, you got this guy right here who can really pass the ball, who can really play make, who has the court vision, you should really be going to him. And so I'm going to go around to y'all first, because I have a lot to say on that topic and specifically Sengun, but I kind of want to know what y'all think about this Rockets team first.
So starting off with this Rockets team, man, like you stated, it not only is it like a personnel, like, you know, like new players coming in, it's a whole culture switch.
Yeah.
And you know, another player, you know, you didn't mention was Dylan Brooks, somebody like Dylan Brooks.
I want to get to him too.
You know, so it's basically they brought in people who are like, we've won, maybe not a chip, but we've won, and this is what it takes to do that. Are you guys willing to do that? Yes, or you can leave. And they started cleaning house, and it's just functioned very well, man. Sengun specifically, they've given him a way bigger role offensively, way more spaced 1 and 5 pick and rolls, because last year with Kevin Porter Jr. and even with Jalen Green still, the pacing isn't there for Sengun. So Van Vliet kind of matches his pace in these, and he's able to function as just a short roll guy. He can roll all the way to the rim. He can just a hub offensively, dribble handoffs, everything. And he's doing everything that he was doing last year, but just on another tier of efficiency. So the offense is really, really taken off. And surprisingly, they're playing very, very slow, which is not something that I would have expected when I saw this team, but it's making sense. They're being more organized, I think, is the key word. Doesn't feel so crazy like it was last year. And Sengun is just, him and Van Vliet, man, have just taken the pace of this team and have just like settled them down. And they're above 500. I think they won like 6 out of their last like 8 games or something like that. Like they've been playing really, really well. So
so I definitely want to get to that Van Vliet and Sengun duo. But first, I'm gonna go to Franky or what he's seen from this team so far.
I just want to highlight Sengun, his improvement. His defense has taken a step in the right direction. Udoka, you know, he's like undoubtedly one of the best coaches in the league. Like from the get-go, really take his team as his first year to the finals. Just a nightmare to watch. As a coach of the Celtics, as a Heat fan, I hated them having a really good coach that I respected. You know, won't talk about what he did to lose that job, but
we're gonna leave that.
He's I'm really happy Milwaukee didn't hire him. Let's just say that. But you know, first he's been a big factor in getting the right guys, the right vets around them. Sengun's also improved a lot, like Lou was saying. His twos, he's shooting 63% from twos. That's up from 57 last year. His post-ups are more efficient. He was in the 63rd percentile last year. Now he's 77th percentile. His fouls are down despite playing 3 more minutes.
That's crucial
per game. He's no Jaren Jackson. His net rating was negative 7.36 last year. It's a positive 5.01 right now on the floor. He's, you know, defense ratings it's a messy stat for individual players. But you know, like a lot of people like to hear it. It was 116 with him on the floor last year, 107 right now. He's just improved a lot. His box outs are up 0.5. It was 0.5 for offense, 1.2 for this year, 1.4 to 2.5 on defense this year. He's just made a lot of strides in the right direction. You know, his shooting is still iffy, but he makes up so much for it with the playmaking, with the scoring. I love the Fred VanVleet setting screens for him and him getting to the cup and the spins, and he's exciting. They're a lot of fun to watch. I'm really intrigued on them finding the right continuing to work, gel with the roster, find the right youth around them. I really like the Reggie Bullock, Jacques Landale additions. Aaron Holiday is a sneaky veteran, 27 years old. I've always really liked him and I wish he found the right home. And I feel he's playing pretty solid for them. So I like a lot of the stuff they did.
And so the reason I pointed out Alperen Sengun as this team's X factor, even last year and wanted him to get more involved in the offense, is he brings something to the game that's starting to come back, but was gone for like probably a good decade. Just somebody who can operate out of the post, whether it's scoring or passing. That's because I started watching basketball at a very young age. So I remember Chris Webber and Vlade Divac and those teams out in Sacramento. And I just couldn't really understand at times why this went away, because what happened is you took away the post game and now you have to rely to be able to force help and bend the defense. You have to rely on downhill attacks. And even if you get a screen, you're not just screening Drew Holiday easily. You're not just screening Marcus Smart easily. And so you're kind of just gambling on that in a sense. And it did work, but then it became switch heavy also. So then you stop yourself that way. And it's a lot you don't necessarily have to deal with if you just have somebody who can dump the ball to. And they still draw the same defenders the same way. The same defenders still have to make a decision. If you got a guy in the corner, he may have to leave his guy or just decide to stay home and just let the guy you're posting up deal with it. If you send a double, that's a big mistake because you're just going to hit whoever's open. And so credit to Alperen Sengun for that. Also, the Fred VanVleet Alperen Sengun duo, like Lou said with Sengun in the short roll, I think one thing we kind of think about with rollers, and specifically in a short roll, is just getting a quick shot off. But when you have somebody who can play make also, when you've already bent the defense with the pick and roll, and then you get the ball to him on a short roll, and you make the next move have to be some help or whatever it is, and then they can make the extra pass, it just unlocks so much for an offense. And then, now granted, they don't have a bunch of shooting on that team, like catch and shoot necessarily. Right. Jalen Green's still pretty inefficient, but that's just watching it, just more so him kind of rushing still. If I was athletic, I'd have a problem slowing down too. I'm going to be completely honest. So I can't blame him for it. And also, like, he's just very young, and I feel like we kind of forget how we see these phenoms and high draft picks. We don't understand they're still 18, 19 when they come into the league. And so it's still – back in the day, they would have been in college still developing that game and not ready for the league. And so I don't blame Jalen Green for that, but I will say if he starts to kind of be a little more efficient, this Rockets team could go from surprisingly good to pretty almost dangerous.
Yeah. Their young guys in general have looked really, really good. But like you said, like not to the tier to make him like dangerous yet. But Green has had moments where he's improved. Sometimes he, against specifically in that Clippers game that they just played in the tournament, he was kind of rushed at times, and it kind of just didn't feel like he knew when, like the spacing aspect, where to attack. He needs to get better with those things. But a guy like, speaking of young guys, man, a guy that I'm just thrilled, and he just, came back to the team now after injury, Tari Eason.
Oh my God. Yeah.
My goodness gracious, man. This guy is a perennial shit talker. And I love it. I love every ounce of hustle he brings, his size, switchability. He literally goes out there and he doesn't care if he was guarding 1 through 5, just offensive rebounding, just reckless at all times in the best way possible. And it's like you've stated, like it's a lot of pieces, and now they're really meshing. Jabari Smith was another guy who you can really see. It's funny because I'm the draft guy, so I love all these rookies. And Jabari Smith, my comp to him was like, eventually who you want him to turn into is a 6'10 Klay Thompson, prime Klay Thompson. Obviously, maybe if the shooting ever gets there. But I'm just saying, because he's a movement shooter. I know his shooting has been kind of iffy, but he's a very good defender as well. I know his fouls are a little high right now, but these kind of things, you pair them alongside Sengun, who's not a great defender, Tari, who is a great defender. Even though Sengun's improved, like, you make his job easier with these guys. Once a man comes back, like, I mean, like him and his twin, all they know how to do is play defense. So it makes Sengun's life, like, you're the hub offensively, kind of like what Jokic is over there. Like, they paired him with a bunch of with a bunch of defensive players and off-ball movers or shooters, and you happen to have a great offense, and the team's a problem. I think the Rockets in a couple years' time wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me this year if they make it past the first round in the playoffs. Yeah,
and you did kind of we kind of glossed over Dillon Brooks, and I understand he's made himself a meme lately. Like, there's no way around that. Like, he just talks a lot of shit. He didn't show up for the press conferences. He said the thing about LeBron, and LeBron cooked him. But my thing about that is, if LeBron cooking you as a standard for you being a good player, nobody's good, because it's LeBron at the end of the day. But I watched specifically that game against the Pelicans, I want to say, where he played great defense all game, but in the fourth quarter while they were coming back, he kind of took that game over on that end. And he reminds me a lot of, like, the great defenders. Like, I'm not putting him on a tier with these guys, but his main attribute on defense is something that Dennis Rodman had, something that Ron Artest had. Not just physicality for the sake of physicality, because that could lead to a lot of fouls. It's leveraging physicality to where he will bump you with his chest in a way that's not necessarily a foul. And as soon as you retaliate, as soon as you bump him back, he won't necessarily flop, but he is willing to take the charge. Just playing those, like there's so much that goes into defense that's just so far beyond just slide your feet and stop him from scoring. It's just, there's so much mental stuff. There's so much film that needs to be studied. And you can really tell Dillon Brooks puts the time in the film room and learning guys' tendencies. And like what he did to Zion Williamson in that fourth quarter, or really that game kind of in general, defensively, you see why he was all defense, and you can see why he talks the way he talks. Not only get into opponents' heads, but just if you can play defense that well, you have the right to talk in a sense. And you also kind of have to have what people refer to with offensive like scorers as irrational confidence.
Yep.
Because you got to think about one night you're guarding LeBron, the next night you're guarding Paul George. During that game, you may have to guard Kawhi Leonard. The next game, you might have to chase Klay Thompson around there. Steph is hot, and the coach is like, all right, you know what? Guard Steph now. It's just like night after night, you're going against these elite players offensively. It's the NBA already, so everybody's tough. But you're going against these superstars, Hall of Famers every night. You have to really believe in your mind, like, okay, I'm blocking that shit up tonight. And so I'm not really mad at Dillon Brooks for the talking. For me, it's just entertaining at this point. But I will say he's able to back it up, to be completely honest.
Yep. And he's a fun villain. The Clippers game the other day, getting into it with Russ. Yeah. And Russ getting the breakaway dunk and putting his hand in his face. You know, that picture is hilarious. I'm not even a huge Russ fan, but that I'm saving that picture and putting it as my wallpaper. I hate Dillon Brooks that much, but it's just that he has that tenacity on defense. Yeah. That you mentioned, the irrational confidence. You do need that on the defensive end to believe you can match up with these guys, and you're on that level of those guys. And he does that a lot of times undersized compared to the guys he's guarding. He's guarding up on the wings a lot, sizing up on big fours, and doing a really great job defensively. And he's a big reason why they've been really solid this year. And I can't wait for Amen to get back, man, because he's special. Tyrese, like the ultimate glue guy with their team, and there's still so much more this team could be. I'm really excited to watch. And Jalen, you know, we've kind of glossed over Jalen a little bit. I know you mentioned him a little bit, Kenny, but this is, you know, when you talked about the Silas, just how it was like a substitute teacher year round, and now you got the fucking drill sergeant Udoka coming in, so he's got to adjust to that, learn how to play within structure and a completely different culture and setting. So he, you know, there's good growing pains and stuff, but I think he's just so talented that he has to make it work, man. He has to make it work. That 2-point percentage is scary right now for him, for the kind of athlete he is and talent he is, but he's 21 years old. Like, we forget that all the time.
Yeah. And the thing I do want to say about Jalen Green before we kind of move on is the reason I'm not mad at him right now about his inefficiency is with these like superstar players growing up, they've been the man their whole lives. And so especially like we've seen like AAU, I believe y'all both coached at one point. There's not much structure. And so you obviously first couple years, like he's playing the same way, and that just doesn't work in the NBA. And now he has this very structured coach running this very strict offense with a championship point guard and all this. So Jalen Green's kind of doing something new in a sense. Yeah. And so that's why I'm not necessarily mad at him for not really being efficient right now. He will eventually kind of fit in, but I think this is going to take time. I feel like he's too talented for it not to work. It's just going to take some time because it's all new to him.
For sure. Sorry, Lou. I just want to say his true shooting percentage is at 54%, and that's got to get better. If you want to be a star guy, I think that's right below league average. If I'm, it's like 55 or 56%, something like that, and he's right below it either way. So he's got to be better. So, go ahead, Lou.
No, I was gonna say, to Kenny's point, I think they've only played like 12, 13 games. Like, this is completely new to him. He's never had a guy that has orchestrated an offense to this level. I mean, for God's sake, their point guard before was Kevin Porter Jr., who's not really a point guard.
He got a whole bunch of other stuff going. I don't even want to get into that.
But that's what I'm saying. Now he has not just one, he has 2 point guards once a man comes back, and they can different tempos, they can play differently. I think what's something that's truly special is the way that their defense can be versatile. When Sengun's off the floor, they switched everything as Jeff Green and Tari Eason came back, and they had 2 6'8" lengthy dudes along with Jashawn Tate. Like they're just causing havoc and stuff. And I think eventually he will, Jalen Green was the second overall pick for a reason. The guy, he wasn't drafted because he can defend. He was drafted because his upside was 30 points a game.
Yeah.
So just give him some time. He's 22 years old, man. He'll be fine. This team will be better.
And he shows the flashes. And so
for sure.
I think that's going to become, especially with people setting the table for him, like Fred VanVleet, like Alperen Sengun, like Amin Thompson when he comes back. He'll be perfectly fine. And he's been off ball more. I don't know, I have the numbers on that, but he's been off the ball a lot more this season just from me watching. That's what the eye test is telling me. I don't have enough to prove it, like I said. But once that adjustment happens, we're going to really see a different Jalen Green, a different Houston Rockets. And that being said, speaking of young teams kind of figuring it out, we're going to move on to the Indiana Pacers. Now, this is a fun team. And I've said this for like a year. I'm not just saying this just because it's the topic. My favorite player in the league is Tyrese Haliburton. Because my first favorite player ever when I started watching basketball, 10 years old, 2002, was Jason Kidd. So I've always had an affinity for these point guards who can just see everything on the floor, like have some flash to their game, but also really efficient, don't give the ball up. And that kind of went away for a while too in the NBA. Just like posting up, those floor-setting point guards kind of did go away. Steph Curry changed the game, and that's not a bad thing. Steph Curry obviously is Steph Curry. I'm never going to disrespect him. But the game changed, offense changed. You would kind of have point forwards on different teams and kind of teams just figuring it out. But Tyrese Haliburton, first of all, I want y'all to get into him, and then we can talk about the rest of the team.
Go ahead, Frankie. Go ahead.
Man, Tyrese. First off, I want to shout out Caitlin Cooper. She covers the Pacers. She has her own blog, Basketball She Wrote. You can follow her, C2_Cooper. She is one of the best basketball writers and covers of the league. She was just on the dunker spot with Nikias Duncan and Steve Jones.
Shout out to them.
Man, great episode. She breaks it down so differently and like so in depth. Like I've learned so much listening to her breakdown, and that makes watching the Pacers and listening to their stuff makes it even more fun because you're learning about stuff that you've only seen bits and pieces of watching other teams, and they do things so differently and like to the 100th percentile effort and speed. Everything is so fast with Tyrese. He is not one of those ball dominating guards. No. His usage percentage, I was shocked when I looked at it because of how many assists, how many points he scores. His usage was like 24%, which is crazy. 24.8%.
Crazy.
I feel like Duncan Robinson was like close to that since Tyler has been out.
Yeah.
Tyrese is insane. I got just some numbers to break it down. He's shooting 43.6% from three. His twos, he's shooting 61% from two. He's shooting more free throws, 93% doing it. 2.1 more assists since last year. His fewest turnovers per game since his rookie year, where he was playing less minutes. He's scoring 4 more points per game. His true shooting percentage, this feels insane when I looked at it. For a point guard who's not like above the rim all the time kind of guy, 67.7%. His assist percentage when he's on the court, 50.6. This stat might be a little old. It's from the 15th, so it might have changed. He was averaging 41.2%, 41.2 assisted points per 100 possessions.
That's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
That's ridiculous. Nobody
crazy.
Scores 41 per 100%. He was assisting on 41.
That's just assists, and he's dropping 24 more on top of that, extremely efficiently.
Yeah.
And it's no surprise net rating of 10.29 when he's on the floor. When he's off the floor, they're getting outscored by the same amount, basically. Mm-hmm. He's been a demon. Just gives the ball up. He made a play the other night that Caitlin was breaking down that I didn't even I didn't see a lot of people talk about it. He did a fake dribble handoff in transition, spun around and just shot it with like 20 on the clock and drained it against the Sixers in the tournament game. He's just so fun to watch. He's an unselfish point guard. He doesn't need he's pointing actions out, telling guys to move, positioning everyone on the court. Like, he's just one of the highest IQ players I've seen, and he's 23 years old.
See, I didn't even realize his age because I know he went to college multiple years. So 23 is insane. Luke?
It's like you said, man, it's literally crazy how efficient he is with the basketball. Efficiency is my end all be all when it comes to basketball players because I think that's what wins you games, to be honest. But today, they got kind of killed by Orlando. Bad game. Everything happens. Yeah, but today, he turned the ball over for the first time in 91 minutes. Do people know how 91 minutes he's played? Not 91 NBA minutes. 91 minutes he's played. That's almost 3 full games for his first turnover. Like, that's ridiculous. His efficiency, his ability to get everyone involved without like ball hogging and killing momentum or, out dribbling or, just getting everybody into the flow of the offense at all time. This team has 8 players scoring over 10 points per game. Like, this is crazy. They're scoring 126 points a game. Like, the ball is just zipping, and he can play on or off the ball. Those 2 years with De'Aaron Fox have definitely helped him develop more of an off-the-ball game because even in college, he was almost strictly a point guard. But he's still doing all this within the flow of the offense, and I don't think anybody expected the Pacers to be this good. No. I thought they were going to be better, but like the level of offense that they're currently playing is like I think it's literally record-breaking at this moment. 126 points per game is unheard of right now.
And so the thing with Tyrese Haliburton, he has that, as far as his playmaking, he has that Nikola Jokic, LeBron James factor to where as soon as you flinch, like if you're a help defender, like as soon as you even flinch in a direction where you see he's hitting an open man, like right away. And it doesn't matter where he is, the opposite side of the floor, whatever, he's hitting you right in the chest and you're wide open. And that's just not something you really see that often. That's like a different level. And then you add on how fast they play. Now, granted, it is because, look, with this team outside of Tyrese Haliburton, they have a lot of talent, but they don't have much creation outside of him, right? Mm-hmm. So they don't have the guy to where at the end of the game, outside of him, you just give the ball in isolation and they're going to make something happen. They have a lot of pieces that can really benefit off him. Now, I don't know how that's going to necessarily work in the playoffs. But even still, just watching it and just watching the way he's able to find guys the split second they get open, it's insane to me.
Yeah, I think something that's really, really interesting, not just to to take away from Tyrese, but something that's cool is they're not really a big team, so they kind of play to this pace. Mm-hmm. They trust Miles Turner to do a lot down there for them in terms of just rebounding and holding down the fort in the paint. But I think a guy who's really stepped up for them this year specifically has been Aaron Nesmith, somebody that nobody even knew about. But he's literally won him a couple games just off of his straight 3-and-D presence, as well as his ability to just disrupt sets offensively, get players, 2 steps off of where they're used to getting, and being able to. I think he's shooting 46% from 3, which is ridiculous from Aaron Nesmith. And like players like this, little contributions from players like him, Bruce Brown, who everybody should know Bruce Brown. He's the ultimate glue guy. Yeah, big guy. And just like players, they've basically built the team perfectly around Tyrese and gave him the keys, and he hasn't disappointed.
And I do want to get to Aaron Nesmith also because as soon as he came over from, I think, Boston, I like 100% for Boston.
Yeah, he was in the Brogdon trade.
Yeah, he was in the Brogdon trade. And I knew he was one of those guys from what he showed in Boston on the defensive end specifically that would have a huge role in Indiana. I think because a lot of times with defense, it gets overlooked, like the little things get overlooked. You'll kind of look at because most people, myself included up until a couple years ago, we just kind of watch the ends of the play, make or miss, block shot, turnover. We kind of watch the end of it and not what's going on during the process. And so what happens with defenders in general, especially with guys like Nesmith who aren't going to have 5 steals and 5 blocks in a game, the little things like just blowing up a team's action, right? Just getting your guy out of his comfort zone, maybe taking away a move, his patented move, like just watching enough film to know this setup is going to lead to this. That makes such a huge difference to a team. And so I do want to give him credit for that, as well as some other guys along, like Dylan Brooks, we spoke about earlier, also does those things. So I want to give him credit for that, just because that gets overlooked a lot. And I just feel like it's something that should be talked about.
No, for sure. And they have, shout out to Rick Carlisle because he's. Oh yeah. I still have nightmares of the 2011 championships with Spo. Just like that, I was super young. I was like 18. And at the time, 18, 19 at the time. And I'm like, God damn, there's a big difference in the coaching right here. Yeah. And it's not that Spo's bad or anything. It's just that there's a level of experience that Carlisle had on Spo at the time. And Spo's obviously caught up and become a fantastic coach. But I've had so much respect for Carlisle, especially as an offensive coach, just because even back then he was really passionate about flow. Flowing in the offense, moving without the ball, hit ahead passes, taking a lot of threes, spacing the floor. He runs a lot of 5-on-0 in practice to help work on the actions. All right, there's no defense. Get into the next one. What's the next action? What's the next option? What do we got to do now in this scenario? Let's go. So you're thinking it. You're just purely thinking it without actually being able to see it. So you have to practice differently with him, and he makes you adjust, and he gets the best out of a lot of the guys. Lou mentioned all these guys in double figures. How about Jalen Smith averaging 11 a game after he was cut on his rookie deal?
Crazy.
As a lottery pick from the Suns. Like he's been a contributor for them. Nesmith, who they didn't even really mention as like the centerpiece of the Brogdon trade. He was just like, oh, they got the Brogdon for nothing. Yeah, he's been a great contributor for them, playing up. He's 6'5", and he's guarding 3s and 4s for them and doing his job. Bruce Brown, he is always guarding up because he's only like 6'3", but he's been fantastic. Obi Toppin just cutting, running, getting so many lobs. He's so fun to watch on this team. I'm so glad he's not in a slog of an offense like he was with the Knicks, but he just fits so much stylistically better with this team, and he's having fun. Like you can tell, this team is having a lot of fun playing together.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Obi Toppin, and this is not even like to slight the Knicks or anything, but just knowing you have a consistent role and that you'll get the opportunity can change everything for a player. And then you put him with a point guard, like we just gave the highest praise to, like a Tyrese Haliburton, and with a coach like Rick Carlisle, who, like you said, still gives me nightmares of 2011. And I want to talk about that for a second, because I don't know if y'all had the same experience as Heat fans, but I just had to respect it. I couldn't even be mad. Like, it was such a coaching masterclass. And then the fact that everybody loves Dirk, it was like, all right, cool. But to see Rick Carlisle bring all those things to a different team over a decade later, and it's still just as effective, it's really just so impressive. And so to also have a guy like Obi Toppin, who's known for his athleticism, but just kind of struggled with other stuff and kind of couldn't figure himself out in New York, because, and it's another thing, just coaching and how they fit teams. Tom Thibodeau is a defensive coach, flat out. If you can't defend for him, you're probably not going to have a role for him. And there's nothing wrong with that. But now Obi Toppin has an opportunity. He'll get better defensively over time, I'm sure. But it's just been great seeing him in that offense also, like Frankie said. Lou, you had something?
I was just going to state, we're giving him a lot of praise. Are there any concerns about this team? Yeah. Because watching this Magic game today, First of all, Orlando, they're a problem. I'm pretty sure we'll talk about them at some point because they're serious. But just the size, I feel like has been a concern. And when it does come to getting stops, I don't know how much stops they can get because they are a defense who relies a lot on Miles Turner. Miles Turner he's a great rim protector and stuff like that. But his versatility defensively, even though it's been a lot more improved, I think his biggest weakness as a big man has always been his rebounding. Yeah. And when they're a small team around him, finishing possessions and stuff like that. But I'm just curious, what do you guys think? And do you think the answers are currently on this roster to kind of tweak or fix some of those things?
So for me personally, not really. It depends on how long you're willing to wait, right? Because it is the thing that happens with young teams is you're gonna have guys who are just ahead of other ones. And in Tyrese Haliburton's case, he's just so far ahead of everybody. They kind of have to catch up in a sense. We haven't talked about Buddy Hield either, who's been good, but I'm just not sure because they would have to rely on him so much on offense. And like Frankie mentioned with the net rating just mirroring each other in a sense, that explains, I didn't even know that. That just kind of explains what I've been seeing. If it's not Tyrese Haliburton, that offense just kind of has nothing because like I mentioned, they don't have many other creators. And what happens also is there's a very thin line. And this is why it's like back in the Suns days would be like, you can't win with this style. There's a very, very thin line between playing fast and rushing. And they find themselves rushing a lot. And that leads to the other team taking advantage of the turnovers like we saw tonight against Orlando. And so that's my concern. Just outside of Tyrese Haliburton, where do they get the productivity? And do they find that balance between the pace they want to play and take advantage of teams and not shoot themselves in the foot by playing that pace at the wrong time or maybe playing a little too fast? Frankie?
On the roster, I don't think they have the talent to get defensively where they need to be. They don't, like Lou, like you mentioned, the size and the lack of physicality and stuff on that end. They're a really young team. Like we just talked about the Rockets and their youth, but they've got a Dylan Brooks, a Fred VanVleet. They have Jayshawn Tate. They have
Jeff Green
in that roster that are physically mature and mentally mature. I'm looking at the Pacers roster right now. There's in the rotation consistently. There's two guys above 28, and one of them is TJ McConnell, who has been in and out of the lineup a little bit, and even at best, he's a 15-minute per game guy probably. So, Bruce Brown is great, but he's undersized at his position. Like, and this is like I really like him for this team, but he's not, he can only do so much. And the same thing as Nesmith, I like him, but he does have his limitations too. And they probably need an Aaron Gordon like trade to fit around. Hopefully Obi Toppin's that guy and matures and improves on that end. But until he does, I gotta think the answer is gonna lie elsewhere.
To that front, it's kind of interesting because we've talked about how good this team has been specifically offensively. They took one of my favorite guys in the draft. They took Jarris Walker really early. So I'm curious to see how much he plays. Not that he's necessarily deserved to get more minutes because I don't think he's looked as good as I thought he would look. Right. I just feel like he's kind of been fitting in, but I feel like he is the guy that they're looking like. He's in that mode of player that they're looking for at this 4 spot to give him some size, give him some defense,
physicality for sure,
and he still has the passing and stuff, so you can still play fast with him. It's honestly just going to come down to how much he develops to trust him in this situation.
Yeah, and Lou, like we talked about when we were doing the Heat breakdown for the draft, we were just talking about our favorite guys that there's no way in hell the Heat are going to land.
And he was one of them.
And Jarris Walker was one of them because when I saw him in the tournament, I was like, physically and basketball-wise, like this guy reminds me a lot of ways of Bam. And I mean that in the highest praise, as Bam is one of my favorite players to watch. And like he definitely has gotten off to a slow start. He's got some G League stint, I believe he did as well. But he's only played 3 games. He's still young, despite being a rookie. He's pretty old for a rookie. He's 20. That's an old for a one and done guy now.
Crazy.
But he could be that answer because I could see him playing next to Miles and with his, he showed flashes of being a high post guy. Miles, we know, can shoot the three. Jarris can shoot it a little bit too. So I like him. I just got to see him do it at this level before I like my potentials. My ceiling for him has been reevaluated a little bit just because of the early struggles, but I still want to give him time because we know big men take a long time to adjust sometimes.
Yeah. And so from the young teams, kind of figuring stuff out, we're going to just kind of close this out with a team who's had question marks for years now, mostly because of health, but just also other reasons, to be completely honest. We're going to figure out the LA Clippers, right? So they made the big trade with James Harden. I know what I think about that trade. The whole world's shared what they think about it. Not many people are high on it, feel they have the potential I think they have, but I'm going to go to y'all first. So, Lou, we're not really going to talk about the development of guys here because that's not where this team is. They kind of have to do something at this point. So, what do they have to do to reach the goal they want to reach?
I don't know, man. I think this team is super, super interesting. It's a very polarizing team because, people were, they started off, they lost 4 games. To me, that's irrelevant. It's the first 4 games Harden has played all year. It really comes down to how much are these guys willing to sacrifice? Yeah. That's kind of what I view it as. How much are they willing to give up and how much are they willing to put their egos to the side and then on the other end get after it. And I'm not saying that they haven't done it. I actually think it's been quite the opposite. I think the last game they played against the Rockets, Harden specifically, he was guarding point of attack almost the whole game. I don't think Harden's done that since he was in OKC, if I'm being very honest. But it's just things like that, makes me I guess a little bit higher on this team than I feel like everybody else is. Like just the sheer talent, man. Their ability, like these are all players who one way or another, they've been the guy on their team. Yeah. And now you have 4 players who have always been the guy on their team. Is one season enough time to maybe, who knows, that's the interesting part. But they're all, not only were they the guy on their team, they're all like incredibly high IQ basketball players. Yeah. Like it's not like we're talking about players who all their only job was to score. Right. Harden's job was literally to run, like he ran the greatest offense we had seen up until that point. Like he was the greatest one-man engine during the regular season that the NBA has seen. I have to add that in there. But it's true. Like Westbrook obviously as well, super high IQ guy. Can we talk about like Kawhi and Paul George? Like we know what they are, two-way phenoms. It's just how much are they willing to gel and who's going to be the 5th guy with them? Because I don't know if the answer is on this roster, and that's no disrespect to Zubac. I think he's a very good backup big. It's just I don't know if he fits their play style at this current moment. But, man, this team is – I think this is the most polarizing team in the NBA.
100%. Bar none. Frankie, what do you got on? What do you think the Clippers have to do to kind of get to
man, I'm still interested in them because like I see some of the vision. But like you talked about Lou, you talked about PG and Kawhi, and like they're both great on and off ball guys. So and shout out to Kawhi. I want to give him a shout out first. He's played all 11 games. Yeah, like what? That's crazy for. It's such an accomplishment for Kawhi, but it's great to see him on the court and healthy and like being able to play through whatever bumps and bruises he gets along the way. And he's still playing really well too. But it's just a balance because Harden has never really been that guy off the ball. Right. And that's been a problem. He's never been a relocator. He's never been a catch and shoot guy.
Definitely not a cutter.
And not a cutter. And he's never, and it's not even that he was inefficient at it. He's just been unwilling to do all those things. He's not a screen away guy. Doesn't do anything off the ball. He stands and waits. He's not ready, not a threat. And it's for such a dynamic offensive weapon to just be nothing off ball. It's like it's such a waste. Yeah. And here, like he's playing, he's played a lot with fucking stars and Hall of Fame talents, Hall of Fame players, guys in their prime. And now like he has to like really adjust to this team. And they've had some early struggles. And shout out to Russ for willing to take one for the team and come off the bench. But I'm still really confused on the pieces, man. I personally would have really liked if they had been able to keep a Batum or a Covington. I feel like those are glue guys at the big wing spot that could really help. But we'll see how they go. I'm really curious. I think Ty Lue is a good coach.
Yeah.
I know he has segments of the Clippers fan base that really can't stand him.
That's every fan base, though.
That's every fan base. Every fan base. I see Warriors fans that there's Heat fans that don't believe in Spo.
Yeah.
So it's everywhere. But this team is interesting. And but I still don't know what the sum of these parts can be.
Yeah. I'm a little bit with both of you. I do feel like the backlash they've gotten is kind of like, I wouldn't say uncalled for necessarily, because there are questions for this team, but I don't think they'll be half as bad as people think they will be.
Yep.
But at the same time, I do still have my questions. But they did answer my first question, right? Because every time you get these star players that come together, the difference between that working and not working has been somebody demoting themselves to be a role player, right? So when we look at Chris Bosh in Miami, taking a back seat and going from, he was still an all-star in Miami, but just not taking as many shots and becoming a better defender. We look at that. When we look at what's the other example? Golden State's a little different because they just have, I don't want to necessarily call Draymond and Clay role players, but they are guys who never really needed the ball.
Stars in their roles.
Well, Draymond needs the ball to set up other guys. And Clay, he's not even going to dribble. He's just going to launch it, knock it down. And Steph Curry, as great as he is on ball, he's probably better off ball. Right. And so to put a KD, it was a lot easier because it's not necessarily guys making themselves role players. It's just being stars in a role and not demanding the ball. With this Clippers team, that's my question. Every time stars come together, but with the Clippers team, I was like, who's going to be the guy to do it? And Russell Westbrook volunteered to come off the bench. And so that's a step in the right direction. So there is some organization. It looked a lot different in that Rockets game. We saw James Harden kind of break out and have a signature James Harden game. And so I think it remains to be seen with them. Unfortunately, health is a factor in basketball. I wish we could turn injuries off, but they aren't the most durable roster. So hopefully everything goes well on that end. But there's just a lot of question marks in general with this team, specifically that. And that's what it has been over the past few years.
I do, to your credit, I thought specifically the last game against the Rockets, I thought Harden looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think it's understated how much he was getting to the rim.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing Zubac does do very well for him is set screens. Yeah. He's a very good screener, so he's able to just create that little bit of leeway. I do think they're not shooting as many, this whole I know it's been popular on Twitter, they're passing up open threes. I still think they're doing some of that. Yeah. They're pumping and just waiting for the guy and trying to do something, and it's not there. And you look up and there's 5-6 seconds and you have to force up a shot. But I thought the last game, the process was a lot better. Throughout the course of the game, Kawhi was more so just picking his spots. I thought Paul George started off good and then kind of got a little funky, just kind of forcing. Credit to Dylan Brooks for actually, making him force some of those shots. But I'm super interested to see what this team looks like. And I know this is going to sound ridiculous when somebody like Mason Plumlee comes back, because I don't think
it's not ridiculous at all.
Yeah, it's somebody who, for better or for worse, he can catch lobs, something that Harden has historically always had. And, that's kind of his bread and butter, is being able to facilitate his big men off the pick and rolls and stuff like that. I'm very curious as well. The last thing I will state is how much of a role does Russell Westbrook have off the bench?
Right.
Because this last game, he was, he wasn't really doing much, to be very honest. In terms of he wasn't being asked to do much. He was kind of being asked to be a spacer. And I don't think that's him in his best set, but I'm curious to see how much freedom and leeway he has to start operating and getting to the rim. He did shoot 4 free throws in 17 minutes, so that's always good.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what do you guys think specifically? Do you think this bench unit now with Westbrook is enough to hold this team above water when some of those guys do end up getting hurt or sitting? Or like basically, do you think the depth can hold this team up?
I honestly don't think so. I don't think, especially if you're missing a Paul George or a Kawhi, things get a little murky. And you could give Russ his own unit, and I understand Russ is still a good player to me. Like, I know the Lakers run was bad, but he's still productive in my eyes. But I don't know if it's going to be enough, because there's different standards with different teams for what they're trying to do.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's enough. If they were just trying to get to the second round or whatever it is, then of course. But for them to try to win a championship, I don't know if they can't afford to lose Paul George or Kawhi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And unfortunately, the last game, PJ Tucker stuck out like a sore thumb. Still just not willing to shoot, not really doing anything out there. He competes, he tries, and I miss seeing him in Miami because it hurts seeing him what he's become after this. But he played 15 minutes, was a minus 24. Had 0-0-0-0 across the box score, only put up 3 personal fouls. Like, he's just not what they need out there. He doesn't really fit as that athletic wing that they would ideally use. Like, you talked about a rim runner for Harden. I'm interested in like the 2-man units of what they're gonna do, because Russ has played with PG and Harden before.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering to see who obviously you can all stagger a Harden and Russ, but you could also play them together, and they had a lot of success in Houston, and Russ had a lot of individual success. So you can use him off the ball as a screen guy, as the power guard that him and Bruce Brown have famously done. So there's some things to do. Norman Powell's still a really solid contributor off the bench, but after that, they picked up Daniel Tice. But I don't know how good he can be in that role. He's not really a rim runner. He's like a high post hub kind of guy. He can dunk, but it's not really a lob threat kind of guy.
Yeah, and I do want to kind of expound on something you mentioned, because they did use Russ a lot last year as a roller, and that was very effective for him. But they didn't have somebody who can run a pick and roll like James Harden last year.
Yeah,
and so I do think that's going to unlock a lot of stuff for him. And so I'm interested to see more of that. They did a little bit of it against the Rockets, but I do want to see them kind of – that's what they can do. If they're missing Paul George and Kawhi, they can kind of go to that. I don't know if it's going to get them enough to reach the expectations they have for themselves and for what anybody probably should have looking at the roster. Yeah. But I think that is going to kind of help them out. Lou, you had something?
No, I was just gonna state, with Russ being a screener and stuff like that, the whole thing. Why I do think Zubac, he is kind of important for this team, even though I don't think he's the right person, is because when Zubac is there, that they're not switching that, because he is at least big enough to go down there, but the Kawhi screens to Harden can be switches. Same for Paul George. Same for Russell Westbrook. So how much can this offense facilitate out of that and just actually attack these mismatches, and how much do you trust these people doing that consistently for 82 games and whatever it takes in the playoffs?
Right. Yeah. And I think with the Clippers at the end of the day, and it's unfortunate because just looking at the roster over the years, even when they had the Patrick Beverley and all that, you want me personally, because there's people who Paul George is also a very polarizing player, to be completely honest. James Harden I don't even think polarizing at this point. He's just not liked.
Bingo.
Only by humble Tej.
He's pretty disliked. And Russell Westbrook, same thing. He's more disliked than liked. But for me personally, I at this point, I'm gonna be completely honest. Up until a couple of years ago, I did have players I didn't like, and James Harden was near the top of that list. But there's just a certain amount of talent that I just can't deny, and I'd rather not deprive myself of enjoying the game in that way. Yeah, and so for me,
I feel like as a Heat fan, I'm one of the few people who's always enjoyed watching James Harden because
yeah. I just don't want to deprive myself of enjoying the game in that way anymore. But it's just unfortunate that there's still all these question marks about this team, whether it's health, whether it's fit, whether it's just it remains to be seen with them. That's gonna do it for today's episode of Playoff Out, episode 1. So I'm gonna get off and congratulate myself because y'all have no idea how much has gone into this, to starting this thing. But if you like the intro and outro music, that's by my brother Devin. That's at BlackGlowMusic on Instagram and TikTok. Lou, real quick, give them your @name, where to find you.
At SaucyTakes. You can find me on every platform, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok, even though I don't post on there. But if you want to follow, go ahead.
Frankie?
You can find me on Twitter at FrankyG_. It's Frankie with a Y. Shout out to Kenny. I thought I peaked on Twitter. He announced this, and I hit 1,900 followers finally.
Wow. And that being said, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time.